Welcome to another Rusty Rails Rail Fanning Adventure. On March 18th, 2023, we made a trip to the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum and rode the train behind steam locomotive Southern Railway number 4501.
The Tennessee Valley train number 100, the world-famous Missionary Ridge local. Now, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Justin, and I'll be your tour guide and flagman for this journey back in time. Our trainman today is none other than Jonathan Shields. Our conductor is Zach Langley. And finally, your engine crew is Travis Gordon and Brian Hunt. Now, ladies and gentlemen, today you'll be embarking on a 55-minute experience back in time. And this experience does include 15 to 20 minutes of travel in each direction over the 3 miles of track donated to us by the Southern Railway. Now, it also includes a 20 to 25-minute layover in East Chattanooga. We'll have a brief demonstration of our turntable, as well as a behind-the-scenes look in our back shop. Now, ladies and gentlemen, stay here right on a 3-mile section of railroad, completed in 1858 by the East Tennessee and Georgia Railway. Now, the ET&G would merge with a number of other railroads over time to eventually become the famous Southern Railway in 1894. Now, the Southern Railway would continue to use this line up until the mid-1950s, when they would abandon it for reasons I'll explain later in our journey. Now, a new line would be constructed just to the north in 1954, which bypassed this line altogether. We're now crossing over our first bridge over South Chickamauga Creek. In the water below today, you may spot some turtles, river otters, or geese. To the left of our train, you may have spotted a set of stone bridge piers. Those stone bridge piers mark the site of the original bridge, as well as the original railroad. That bridge back there would be washed away in a flood of 1861. Floodwaters would rise as high as 9 feet above that bridge. Now, those floodwaters would unfortunately wash away the south of the Chickamauga Creek Bridge. Now, at the time of that washout, there was unfortunately a train coming. Now, the engineer of that train did not see the bridge had washed away in time, and, well, let's just say, engineer train that day went for a little bit of a swim. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, we're now crossing over our second bridge over the Western and Atlantic Railroad. Now, the Western and Atlantic was the first railroad into Chattanooga, completed in 1850 by the state of Georgia. Now, interestingly enough, that line down there is still owned by the state of Georgia, although it is currently leased out to CSX. Now, just a little bit of history on the cars you're riding in today. If you're riding in the rear car of our train, the car which I'm speaking from, you're riding one of my personal favorites, Central of Georgia Railway, number 906. The car here was built in 1924 by the Pullman Company, and it would have operated for the Central of Georgia Railway. And this car would have operated on trains such as the Seminole, the Man of War, or even the Central of Georgia's prized Flamingo. Now, this car here is unique among our collection, as well as preserved rail cars here in the United States. As in the 906 today, if you look towards the center of the wild car, then finally, the first car of our train, which is unfortunately closed due to sound system issues today, is Central of Georgia number 907, built in 1947 by the American Car and Foundry. That first car of our train would have operated on trains such as the Nancy Hanks 2, a passenger train running between Atlanta and Savannah, Georgia. Ladies and gentlemen, we just crossed over our third and my personal favorite bridge over Tunnel Boulevard. Now, crossing over Tunnel Boulevard means that we are approaching the steepest portion of our railroad. On this portion of the line, there are grades topping out at 1.5% to 2%. Folks, that means that we are making our climb up Missionary Ridge. But rather than to travel over it, we're going to be traveling through it, through the Missionary Ridge Tunnel, also known as the Whiteside Tunnel. This tunnel here is 986 feet long. It was completed in 1858, dedicated in 1859, and was excavated entirely by pick and shovel, as dynamite was not invented until 1867. Now the tunnel here would be excavated from both ends of the ridge, meeting in the middle. Now when the two portals would meet in the middle, they were only off-center from one another by 3 inches, which for 1858 technology is quite impressive. Ladies and gentlemen, you may just heard the whistle of our locomotive, number 4501, signaling our approach to the tunnel, meaning that we will be entering the tunnel walls at any moment. Now, folks, if you're riding in the adjustable window car number 1000, and you are riding with your windows open, please do remember that at times there are less than a foot of clearance between us and these tunnel walls. So please keep all hands, arms, feet, heads, husbands, wives, children, or in-laws inside the car at all times. Now, if you have a flashlight out on your cell phone today, folks, I do recommend you having those out at this time to illuminate the tunnel walls as we pass through them.
Ladies and gentlemen, Whiteside Tunnel coming up. Ladies and gentlemen, Whiteside Tunnel.
Ladies and gentlemen, just like that, we are now on the west side of Missionary Ridge, which means that, ladies and gentlemen, we are now approaching what I believe to be the best portion of the Missionary Ridge local tour, and folks, that will be our layover in East Chattanooga. Now, folks, while in East Chattanooga, they will have a brief demonstration of our turntable, where we'll rotate the historic number 4501 180 degrees for the return trip to Grand Junction. We'll also have a behind-the-scenes look at our restoration facility, and that's where we restore veterans and inspect our equipment. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you are not required to board the train if you're in East Chattanooga, although I do highly recommend you to, as this is one of the last places in the world where you can still see what's about to take place.
Black lung.
You can choose to join the train today. You can have a few brief safety rules we ask you to follow. Now, ladies and gentlemen, rule number 1 today is to please remain with the group at all times, as this is a guided tour, so please do not wander off.
Yeah.
And rule 2 is please do not climb on any equipment you can see around the property. I know it can look very fun, but it is very dangerous. Rule 3 is to please don't come to a complete stop. We will let you know when it is safe to head towards the exits. Now once off the train here in East Chattanooga, just take a left turn and head on down to our turntable. Once everyone is gathered around the turntable, we will begin our demonstration. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, please do remain seated until we come to a complete stop. On behalf of myself and the entire crew of the Missionary Ridge Local, we do want to welcome you to East Chattanooga. We hope you all enjoy, but we once again ask you to please remain seated until we come to a complete stop. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to East Chattanooga. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, well, first of all, welcome to East Chattanooga. As you can see, we've quite literally reached the end of the 3 miles of track donated to us by the Southern Railway. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we do have 2 options from this point. First of all, we can either A, run our train all the way back to Grand Junction Station in reverse, or B, we can use our turntable and we can rotate our locomotive 180 degrees for the return trip to Grand Junction. I'm not sure about you guys, but I think it sounds like a lot more fun to use our turntable. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Oh, come on, it's not that early. We can do better. I said, what do you guys think? That's much better. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. Now, today we're going to be using our 1916 built turntable. This turntable here was built by the American Bridge and Iron Company in Ambridge, Pennsylvania. It was built for the Central Georgia Railway. So this turntable would operate in 2 locations. First of all, it would operate in in Macon, Georgia. And then it would be used in Cedartown, Georgia, a little later in its career. And we would acquire this turntable in the late 1970s. We moved to this location, and it would receive a $100,000 overhaul. Now, this turntable's first day of service here at the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum was July 4th, 1982. We've happily used the turntable pretty much every weekend since then. Now, this turntable here is 80 feet long, and it weighs in at 80 tons. Your locomotive today, the 4501, with a full load of coal and water, weighs in at about 216 tons. That's the overall weight from the two, just around 296 tons. Ladies and gentlemen, think about that number for just a moment. 296 tons. Those your Bob, the average boy on a loaded school bus only weighs in at about 16 tons. Now those thinking, Justin, where in the world are you going with this? It's cold out here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, remember that number, 296 tons, and I tell you that this turntable, yes, this very turntable, would have originally been turned by hand. Upon completion in 1916, this would have been built as an Armstrong table. Now, there would have been a set of poles extending from each corner of our turntable, and it would have been taking at least 4 people to completely turn the table around. Now, do I have any volunteers in my audience today? Anybody? I have one, thank you, ma'am. Can I get a second? I have 2, thank you. I have 3, and since you volunteered, hurry, I have 4. Well, to the 4 people volunteered, we thank you. As today, you're going to be serving as emotional support for our trainman, Jonathan. Everybody say hi, Jonathan.
Hi, Jonathan. How you doing?
Everybody say thank you, Jonathan. As Jonathan will be turning all 296 tons of this locomotive and turntable all by himself. So what do you guys think? You guys just about to risk the tongue-tied there. You guys ready to see him do it? All right, Jonathan, we're ready when you are. That was a major tongue-tie.
Heard that. Cold, bud.
Yes, sir. Now, the way they were able to turn this turntable by, and even the way we're able to turn it by motor today is by ensuring that the table is balanced. Now, in the center of the turntable, there is a 6-foot in diameter ball bearing. Now, your engineer Brian hooked up all but 216 tons that locomotive with that little 6-foot ball bearing. Now, with the 4501, it's just a little bit more difficult. The 4501 here is actually 5 feet longer than the turntable itself. The 4501 is 85 feet long and the turntable is 80 feet. And there's going to be about 2.5 feet of overhang on each side of our turntable this morning. Now, it's because of this overhang we do have to ask everyone to please remain well behind that yellow safety line you see pinned on the ground in front of you. Once again, please do remain well behind that yellow safety line. Just because the 45 on one side of it, you do have to stop the locomotive on our train station. Ladies and gentlemen, this morning I'm very proud to tell you a little bit about my favorite locomotive, Southern Railway number 4501. Now, the 4501 was built in 1911 by the Golden Locomotive in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. That was built for use on the Southern Railway as a freight hauling locomotive. And the 4501 here was the first of 182 unauthorized pilot cycles of the Southern Railway. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I know it's not the first of them, but one is the rail and the pilot. Now, the pilot version is so close to the electric. Has 2 small pilot wheels on board motor, 8 more driving wheels, and 2 small trailing wheels connected under the cab. Well, like I told you a few moments ago, the 4501 here was the first of 182 of those unauthorized Chicago's built for the Southern Railway. Now, of 182 locomotives, only one would not need to be track report, and it would be the old Southern Road Chicago's, the 4501 here. Now, the Southern Railway would retire the 4501 here in 1947 in favor of a modern diesel electric locomotive. The 4501 would then be sold to Kentucky and Tennessee Railway based out of Sterling, Kentucky. It would operate as a full-hauling locomotive up until 1964, when it was once again be retired in favor of a diesel electric. Now, the 4501 would be purchased by the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum for preservation in 1964. The locomotive was called Jackson James Home ever since. We must now line our locomotive up with track number 2 while our train sits on track number 1. so we can perform what is known as a runaround. Now what that means is that our locomotive is going to go past our train and then through a switch. The locomotive will then reverse back through that switch and recouple to the engine of our train. So what was the front is now the back and vice versa. So ladies and gentlemen, that will just about conclude our turntable demonstration. How about a quick round of applause for our crew today, as we couldn't have done it without them. So ladies and gentlemen, at this time, if you would like, you can now follow me back to our restoration shop, where we'll have the next segment of our tour. Now, if you don't wish to visit the restoration shop, you're more than welcome to reboard the train at this time. But for those who would like the restoration shop, will walk this way with me. Welcome into our much warmer back shop. Now those within the shop are responsible for restoring, maintaining, and inspecting our equipment. I know a few time constraints, so we have to try to keep it shorter here, but we'll still try to teach you a little bit about some things. Now there are two projects inside of our restoration shop I'd like to show you today. Would you guys like to see those projects?
Yeah.
I only heard one note that time. That's excellent. So we'll start right here behind me. This right here is none other than Southern Railway number 3164. Now the 3164 here was built in 1925 by the Pullman Company, and it was built for the Southern Railway. Now as you can see, this car is a dining car. This car was built to operate on trains such as the Southern or the Crescent, the Tennessean, and trains much like that. Now the 3164 here is currently a loan car from our friends over at the Southern Appalachia Railway Museum. We leased this car for our dinner train services. Now this car is fully operational, although it is currently receiving a few modifications to allow it to become a perfect dining car. It's receiving a few paint touch-ups on the interior and things like that, and it should be back on our dinner trains within the next week or two. Now we do have dinner trains running from now until November here at the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum. Now we do also have a couple of special dinner trains, such as our Christmas dinner train and our Valentine's dinner train. Now we do also run two on New Year's Eve. So if you'd like to know a little more about our dinner trains, just check out our website, www.tvrail.com. Well, like I said, we hope to have this dining car out of the shop within the next couple of weeks or so. Now, to do me a favor, direct your attention directly behind the 3164. Do you guys see that locomotive back there? That is what I believe to be one of the best running diesel electric locomotives on our railroad. That is the beautiful ex-United States Army number 1829. Now, the 1829 back there was built in 1951 by the Electromotive Division of General Motors. That locomotive back there was built for the United States Army. It is a GP7 locomotive, GP meaning general purpose. That locomotive could be used in freight or passenger services. Now the locomotive back there was, like I said, built for the United States Army, and it would be used for switching purposes at the Kingston Munitions Plant based out of Kingsport, Tennessee. Now eventually the United States Army would have no need to switch their own freight cars, so they would surplus the 1829 back there. And they would sell it at auction in the 1990s. Now, folks, remember the 1990s. We purchased that locomotive at that surplus auction for the mere price of only $250. That's right, folks. We bought a running 1,500 horsepower locomotive cheaper than you could have bought a laptop back then. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that locomotive back there is fully operational. It's currently in our shop. They're receiving some generally scheduled maintenance, and it should be out of the shop in the next 2 weeks or so. Now, folks, this shop is what many people believe to be the backbone of our operation. Folks, it's in this shop that we preserve not only railroad equipment, we also preserve something much more important. Who can tell me what we preserve inside of this very shop here? History, that's absolutely right. Now, folks, whose history is this? Our history, that's right. Ladies and gentlemen, these pieces of equipment you see today, these pieces of equipment are my history. These pieces of equipment are your history. Ladies and gentlemen, these pieces of equipment you see today on our American history. Folks, here at the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum, we see it crucially important to the future of our nation to preserve this American history. Now, folks, these pieces of equipment have been vital to the industrialization of our United States. They've aided in our nation's war efforts. They made our daily travel more efficient and safer. And overall, they've allowed our United States to become the industrial superpower which we are today. Now, folks, it's not just physical artifacts that we preserve here at the museum. We also preserve something that I will argue is 10 times more important than any piece of equipment ever built. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the passion which drives it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's here at the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum that we are constantly passing the torch of historic preservation down to future generations. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to see a perfect example of passing the torch down to future generations, look no further than your tour guide that's flying me today. Folks, today I'm not ashamed to tell you that I'm standing tall at 18 years old. Now, I've been a member of this museum for the past 6 years of my life. I started volunteering in special events at the age of 12. And I've worked my way up to train crew. And folks, throughout the past 6 years of my life, I've learned one lesson that many of my generation have not. And quite frankly, one that many of my generation don't seem to care to learn. And ladies and gentlemen, that lesson is the crucial importance of the preservation of our nation's history. Folks, I could stand up here for days and days on end telling you just why it's important to preserve this American history. But folks, let's face it, none of us want to stand that long. So I'd like to leave you guys with one brief phrase today. You guys ready? Ladies and gentlemen, today in this day and age, if you have a nation that does not preserve its history, and a nation that does not teach its history, you are only doomed to repeat it. And folks, that's just why I hope you're here today. Hope you guys came out to learn a little bit of our nation's railway history. If nothing else, hope I've been able to show you why it's important to preserve it. But above all else, we hope you guys had a good time on the Missionary Rich Local today. What do you guys think? You guys had a good time today? All right, that is just what we like to hear. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that will just about wrap up our shop tour. I do appreciate you guys for kind of bearing with me. My voice is a little bit weaker. I'm having some issues with my left vocal cord, but I think we still did all right. So at this time, I'm going to invite you guys back to the train to reboard or to visit our depot. We want to thank you all so much for riding with us, and we'll see you back on board. Thank you.
On the return trip to Grand Junction, we decided to take the ride in the vestibule. get a cab ride, but my camera malfunctioned, so this is all I got. It's from my phone as the train heads into the tunnel. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked what you saw. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. And ring the notification bell to be notified about my future uploads.